I've been 3D printing for about 8 years. I started off with the Creality CR10 and later moved to the Creality Ender 3 V2. At the time, I was mainly printing flexible TPU filaments for drone parts, and I realized that while a Bowden system was capable of printing TPU, it's not reliable enough to get consistent prints. People will argue that you don't need direct drive to print TPU easily, but I'm in the camp of strongly disagree. So I upgraded the Ender 3 V2 with a direct drive hot end. Learning 3D printing the DIY way is probably the right way to do it, but having to always tinker with the printer is a hobby in itself, and I got completely fed up with it. All of that changed when I got the Creality Simoon V1 Pro. A completely out-of-the-box printer, no building, just connect to the Wi-Fi, connect to their cloud services, which isn't for everyone, and then proceed to buy lots of filaments. And unfortunately, this is where the fun stopped again. At the time, the Creality slicer only had generic profiles that didn't work. So, just like the Ender, I spent months tuning different brands of PLA and even more so with TPU, but actually once I had done that, it was a set and forget solution. However, I've outgrown it. I have project ideas that I simply cannot achieve on a small bed, such as an FPV drift car with extra stuff, more working cockpit gauges, and I'd love to 3D print some planes. I started hearing about Bambu from members in my flying club, so let's hear what they have to say. Okay, Phill, what Bambu 3D printer have you got?
I've got the P1S.
And why should I get a Bambu printer?
Well, it's more saying why I got one myself, and I think it was the speed and the quality of the prints that I've been seeing online, which were much better than what I was getting out of the ones that I'd already had. So I previously had an Ender 5, which I'd tuned and modified. I'd also built a Voron Zero. I just wasn't getting, so the speed thing, but that was just small, and I wanted something with a bigger build plate, Core XY printer that was capable of high speed. It was sort of an all-in-one unit that I could get that wasn't going to sort of require me to do all that extra effort and modifying things, and I don't regret it because I haven't used either of my other printers really since I've had it, because I just basically throw anything after it and it just prints. The AMS is kind of a game changer, and I know there's obviously open source alternatives and other manufacturers are also doing them now. I don't typically do multicolor prints. Rather than having to load filament every single time I want to, use PETG or PLA or whatever, or a different color of one of those on a different print, I just load up the most sort of commonly used things in the AMS and then just choose which one I want to use at that time, and it just prints without any tuning. Recently, there's been a lot of negativity in the sort of community around locking third-party tools out. I personally do use Orca Slicer rather than the Bambu Studio. It's not the end of the world, and if you're coming at it fresh, Bambu Studio is great anyway, but there was certain features that I was using, don't believe are in Bambu Studio, that I'd just rather just stay with it. But it's not really a problem because you can just not update my firmware, still works with what I was using in the same way that I was using. I don't feel I'm missing anything by not upgrading the firmware. It is a closed source system.
And you like very open source stuff?
If there's a choice, I'll typically go down the open source route.
Brilliant. Thanks a lot. Phill. I'll link him down there. Cheers. So, Paul, you've got an X1 Carbon.
Yeah.
And I just want to know what's good about it, and is there anything that you don't like about it?
I've only found one real problem with it, and that's the back lead screw. Cleaning it and greasing it, because it's in a slim channel. The two front ones, you can just get a rag on them, whatever you want. The back one's in a channel. It's pretty hard to get in there to clean it. Apart from that, I haven't had a problem with it. It's basically the Epson printer for a computer, but 3D printer. Send something to it, and it just does it, which is what you would with a laser printer or a colour printer, which is what I wanted. I mean, I've been 3D printing. The first one I had was a wooden frame. I can't even remember what it was, Make and Bot or something like that, 15 years ago. They were garbage. They were something you could have at home, and it did a reasonable job. Blockages, problems, left, right, and centre, things not sticking to the bed. Now this, you just know it's got to print. I design stuff, but you can go on Thingiverse or get stuff off there. But I think where Bambu have cracked it is they've looked at what other people have done, and they've gone, well, Thingiverse, that's a good place to get things from. We need one of them. And then we've got our own slicer where you're usually messing about with somebody else's slicer, not a proprietary slicer. And then you've got the firmware, and the three are integrated.
So you're talking about the Maker Lab?
Maker Lab, and then they've got their own slicer, but they're on top of it. They keep it updated. It works with their filaments. Their filaments are all in the list. Other people's filaments are in the list as well. They've made an ecoverse that works.
Yeah.
And if you're not into 3D printing, which I am, don't get me wrong, I've had loads of them, but if you're not into it, it works. And if you're a first time, somebody who's just like, if you buy an A1 Mini, an A1, you don't have to go for the X1 Carbon. You can just print things.
So have you got any other 3D printers other than the X1 Carbon? And if so, do you use them, or did it just replace all of them?
I've got an FL Sun V400. Quick, nearly as quick, sometimes quicker than the X1 Carbon. Can print taller, but can't print, because it's a circular, so the quick deltas are naturally quick. You can go taller, it can go 400. It's not multicolour, it's just single colour, so you've got to pause it, change and whatnot.
So you still use that along with the X1 Carbon?
Very, very rarely.
Right.
Very rarely. If there's something, I go, right, okay, I need 100 of these. I'll put 50 on the Carbon and 50 on that, just so we can get them done. I designed a little thing for a Vauxhall clutch, and I put 50 on that, 50 on that. The Carbon finished, that was still going. This should be quicker than the Carbon, but it wasn't, because the Carbon's got a longer startup time. That winds me up a little bit, where it vibrates the head, because I don't put bed leveling on. I don't put Purge tower on, and I'm not messing about with the bed. I'm only taking it off, taking my stuff off, putting it straight back on. So it should be the same. But that takes time up, which is why I thought the FL Sun would have beat it, because the FL Sun heats up as quick and then starts printing faster, because it hasn't got to do all that crap. But no, the Carbon still beat it.
What do you make of the firmware stuff that's been going around recently? Has that affected you at all?
Take no notice.
Yeah.
I read it, and then I watched the videos on it, and then I thought, does this affect me?
I suppose another downside you could say is the price, but are they worth the price?
Yes.
That was a very quick answer.
Yes. I paid nearly 800 for the FL Sun V400. I paid 1,200 because it was in the Halloween sale, whatever it was, for the combo. The FL Sun, was it worth it? Yeah. Was this worth it? Hell yeah. If nothing else, the 4 colours you can have, technically 5 if you have one on the external spool sort of thing. It's not that, it's the fact that you can link spools. There was a job I did, and it was 1.73 kilos. Now, I'd have been worried on the FL Sun, that's going to run out, as it, it just carried on. You just told it, link that one to that one, and as soon as it run out, it spooled that one. I couldn't even see where it had done it. There was no layer shift, no layer lines, no nothing like that.
So Gareth's not here, but his turned up with a big hole in the side of it, which is definitely a downside, I think.
Yeah.
Do you know much about that?
He asked his missus to check the parcel, and then when he looked at the box, it looked like a forklift had gone in the back of it. And when he opened the box and took the printer out, the back panel was caved in. He got in touch with Bambu. They said, do you want to send your back panel out and some compensation? He went, no, because I don't know if it's twisted the frame or not. So they said, send it back. And then the post got involved in that, and that was a mess up. Nothing to do with Bambu or Gareth. But he got a new printer out of him. And I think he's as happy as I am.
Well, that's absolutely brilliant. Thanks so much, Paul.
It's all right.
As I want to print big, the Bambu H2D with the AMS 2 Pro combo seemed like my best option. It turned up in a massive box delivered by 2 people as it weighs around 40 kilograms. It only just fits through the door, and it definitely needs 2 people to move it about. You know it's a serious product when there are instructions on how to take it out of the box, and you have to keep the box for a year with all of its contents in case of a warranty claim. You can flatten the box down, but it's important to keep the protective foam intact. There are some plastic clips that they say can be removed with your finger, but this was only the case with the first one as the clip was broken. The others had to be removed with pliers. When I raised this to Bambu, they said that it's difficult because if they actually could be removed with a finger, then they would fall out in the shipping process. Getting everything out of the box is a lengthy process and took me about an hour. They shipped the unit with spare rubber screws for the internal fan, as I believe these have sometimes broken in transit, but mine were okay. The toolbox has some spares, so it does look like the printer will need some maintenance. The Creality probably needs maintenance as well, but I've not touched it in 3 years, and it still works fine, although it's much more simple mechanically than the Bambu. There's the broken clip, but it's not part of the printer. The top lid is made of glass, so I'm keeping it in its protected card for now. The door is also made of glass, so I'm keeping the plastic cover on that for now as well. The AMS is bolted down inside the printer. As is the bed, so all of that has to be undone. The power supply and the PTFE tubing is inside the AMS. Just look at all of that stuff that is not part of the printer, but you will need to keep for your warranty. The external spool holder just slides right on, and it has a PTFE tube holder if you are not using the AMS or want to use external rigid filaments along with the AMS. You can also put TPU here, but not with the PTFE tube as it will jam. As there is a laser version of this printer, it can be upgraded to that. It needs a dummy key to be inserted into the laser's emergency stop connector for it to power on, so it's important not to lose that. The AMS just plugs in with a single cable if you are just using the one. You need external power to use multiple AMS units. As this printer has 2 extruders, you can insert the PTFE tube into whichever one you want at the back. If you print a lot of TPU, then put the AMS into the left extruder, as the left extruder currently can't print TPU. I've put the printer temporarily on a flat piece of wood because it's going to need a very sturdy table built for it. But I want to set it up in the meantime, and this printer is designed to wobble, so it can't sit on carpet. The setup was lengthy but super easy compared to Creality. Connect to your Wi-Fi, as personally this is how I like to use my Creality printer as well. Unlike Creality, it doesn't have an SD card slot. Instead, you can insert a USB flash drive if you want to print offline, but more on that later. I already downloaded the Bambu Studio app to my phone and logged in, so a simple QR code just instantly synced everything. Creality also has a phone app with similar features, but the setup was not as seamless. It then does this calibration, which takes half an hour. You don't load any filament for this, and as I said before, I've left all of the glass in its protective covers, so just make sure if you do this that the top lid is not covering the front vent as it opens and closes. Also, lift out any foam trapped underneath the bed, as well as some sneaky bits of foam at the sides. It makes some pretty weird noises during this calibration for various reasons, one being to actually make the motors as quiet as possible. At first I thought, wow, this printer is actually quite loud, but when you shut the door, all of that goes away. Once the table is built, I will do this calibration again. Weirdly, it then prompts you to update the firmware. You'd think that this would be the first thing that it does before its calibration, but perhaps the calibration is saved separately from the firmware. The update said it would take 20 to 30 minutes, but it actually only took 10 minutes. My first print had to be a poop chute, as this printer is going to be close to a wall. I grabbed some Hatchbox PLA as I hadn't ordered any Bambu filament yet, and set the left nozzle to generic PLA using the external spool holder. I do wish that they would provide a small slimline poop chute with the printer just to get you started. Bambu say that they leave this up to the user as everyone has a different setup, but regardless, just to get you going, I don't think it would be too much of a stretch to include one. I still plan printing with TPU, and the printer has a separate entrance at the back for TPU filament to feed. This is because TPU is not rigid enough and will get clogged in the internal filament buffers, and TPU can only be used on the right nozzle. This is because the left nozzle lifts up and down, and at first seems like a design flaw, but it's not. With dual extruders, if one nozzle didn't lift up, it would catch on the model while the other one was in use and also drip filament onto it at the same time. The left nozzle lifts up and gets covered up by a mechanism to stop any of this from happening, which is clever, but it does mean that for now, at least, TPU can only be used on the right nozzle. I did suggest an override where the user accepts that not dropping the left nozzle could cause issues, so perhaps that's something they can look at. The only other option is to do what Prusa does and have individual extruders, but this is expensive, even more heavy, and can only do one color at a time through each of them. The AMS can't handle TPU either because essentially it pushes the filaments out into the filament buffers, almost like a Bowden setup, but not at the same time because the extruders are still direct drive. TPU would get jammed in the AMS, which is a shame because the AMS 2 Pro can dry filament up to 65 degrees, which would be great for TPU. I've bought their HT AMS on pre-order, which can be used for TPU. They do have TPU that can be used in the standard AMS, but it's going to be pretty rigid, so that's something I might try in the future. Regardless, I decided to mod the TPU Bypass. I bought couplers and cut a short piece of PTFE tubing with a sharp knife to avoid any further friction so that you don't have to completely disconnect the PTFE tubing from the right extruder to print TPU. Instead, you can just simply reroute the PTFE tube from the right extruder to the TPU Bypass. I think this is something that should have come as standard. Next, it was time to build a custom table. My father, being the master craftsman, built a very sturdy table, allowing me to keep the Creality printer underneath for comparison. Check out this custom desk that he made for my Vox-based home recording studio. Now it's all in place, it looks a little bit like a refrigerator, which goes nicely with the Creality as that looks like a microwave. You might be thinking, that radiator is a bit close to the printer, and it's a concern of mine as well. The Creality has been in that same position for 3 years and nothing has melted. Enclosed printers really are a game changer when it comes to consistent prints, especially in this room where it can get really cold. The H2D has a heated chamber to ensure that the temperature inside remains consistent for the more tricky filaments. Regardless, I decided to print an external spool holder that attaches to the AMS, just so that I can move the printer further away from the radiator and also give me better access to the poop chute at the rear. I added some rubber feet to the spool holder so that it doesn't scratch the glass, which, as a side note, is a fingerprint magnet, as is the front door. I bought this slimline 250GB Samsung flash drive so that it can't get knocked and damage the USB port. The longer USB sticks could easily get knocked and bend or break something. I have to say that I absolutely love the workflow in Bambu Studio. Pick your model from the Maker Lab, download the model directly onto the build plate, change the filament profile, in this case to generic PLA, and print. It's easier and more streamlined than my Creality, and the generic PLA profile in Bambu Studio just worked for the hatchbox filament, unlike the hours of tuning with the Creality. As I'm a new user to Bambu, I really don't care about all of this firmware stuff. Everything in Bambu Studio just works. For the Creality, I'm still using that old slicer because it's where I set up all my working profiles, and I like it because it's just a modified version of Cura. However, at some point, the option to send to the printer over Wi-Fi stopped working, and they switched to their Creality print software, which I found to be extremely buggy at the time. So instead, I log into the Creality cloud via a web browser and upload the G-code that way. The Simoon V1 Pro has a camera which you can live view from the phone app as well as through a web browser, but for some reason it doesn't work in Chrome anymore. It only works in Microsoft Edge. And annoyingly, if you're viewing the camera through the browser, then it does time out after a while if you don't set it to full screen. Although, to be fair, the live camera view in Bambu Studio does also time out after a while, and there's no full screen option at all. The only way to get an uninterrupted full screen output is via a hack using either VLC Player or OBS Studio, which is fine, but why not just have it as an option in Bambu Studio? It looks like they discontinued the Creality Simoon V1 Pro really quickly, as it came out just before the faster technology was available, which is a shame because it's actually a really good printer. For example, the Creality does sort of win when it comes to time lapses. They upload directly to the Creality cloud, so there's no need for an internal SD card at all to save the video. However, they are changing this so that you can only keep 15 at a time, which some people like as it frees up their cloud space, but I just like that they were all there from the day that I had it. The H2D can only record time lapses to the external storage device, although the quality is much higher, so this might be why they don't offer a cloud time-lapse feature. However, it's something I would pay for a few dollars a month at least for the convenience, and it's something that I fed back to Bambu. The Creality's camera is in a much better location in my opinion. However, it does have a much smaller bed size and it's a really low resolution output from the camera. But the Bambu's bed is so big that you can print multiple items at a time individually, and this means that objects printed on the other side of the bed might not be seen by the camera. The laser version has a top-down view camera. I hope this can be modified eventually so that we can have multiple camera views of the bed. It does have other cameras on the extruder, but they are not viewable. They are to detect stringing and clogs using AI. The H2D has auto bed leveling as well, which it needs with such a large bed size. It's also got flow rate tests that it can do as well. The Creality didn't have any of that. It was the old paper slide under the bed between the nozzle. But I think the bed on that is so small. I've only ever needed to level the bed once. Next, it was time to order some bamboo filament. Bambu's AMS can read codes on the side of the spools and apply settings for hopefully flawless prints. I was worried that this would be a way that they could hike the prices of their own filament, but I was surprised to see that basic PLA was only $16.99 a kilogram when buying in a bundle. You won't get them as fast as Amazon Prime, but 2 to 3 days wasn't too bad at all. I think the TPU is overpriced, however, although it is high flow, which means it can print faster than standard TPU. So I grabbed one anyway to see if it would just work, and it does. Here is a mount for my Insta360 Go 2, and despite the hours of tuning on the Creality, the Bambu printed faster and much better quality with no tuning required at all. At this point, I hadn't set up the AMS, so that was next on the list. There don't seem to be many tutorials on how to do this, but I can see why, because it does everything for you. Once set up, make sure the desiccant bags are removed from their protective bags, cut away the black tape on the spool, feed the filament down the tube, which it will automatically grab and move back and forth to read the code on the side of the spool. The Bambu filaments come with extra desiccant, which you can add to the AMS at the front for extra moisture absorption, and it's ready to go. The AMS 2 Pro has a drying menu which you can set independently. So, is the H2D for everyone? No. It's expensive, it takes up a lot of space, it's heavy. The dual nozzles mean that you can't always take full advantage of the full bed size, and unless you need to print big, the P1S or the X1 Carbon is the cheaper deal. But for me, it's perfect. The dual extruders mean that the multicolor prints will have much less waste, and the large print bed will unlock project ideas that I can't easily achieve on other printers. It's no secret that I've not been well for the last 5 years, but ever since I got this printer, it's given me my spark back, something which I didn't think was possible. And it's reminded me what it feels like to be excited about something again, and I couldn't put a price on that. Bambu did send me this printer, but if I'd have known it would have this effect, I'd have just found a way to buy one myself. I wasn't required to do a review, there aren't any contracts, I'm free to say what I want, and I hope that came across in this video. There are affiliate links to the Bambu store if you found any of this information useful and you'd like to make a purchase. It doesn't cost you anything, but it will help me in providing future content for the channel, which I'm really excited about. Thanks for watching, cheers.